Thank you, Secretary Teves, for your introduction. Cabinet members, leaders of business, excellencies of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us once again in this semi-annual activity. And this time is a special time. Like in the World Economic Forum, it was the biggest attendance ever in their history because of the times we are in. We are all very much aware of the challenges the global economic crisis confronted by countries around the world. But I hope we are also all aware that ensuring that we continue to weather the global economic storm will require the cooperation and partnership of the government and the private sector. As I'm sure you can remember, a year ago, we were riding the wave. This year, along with all other developed and developing economies alike, we are working hard to make sure that we are not swamped by the world economic crisis. In 2007, the Philippines generated an 8% GNP growth. In 2008, when two-thirds of the world went into a recession, we still managed a 6.1% GNP growth. In the fourth quarter of 2008, Japan's GDP declined by 12.7%, US by 5%, Taiwan by 9%, Thailand by 4%, Singapore by 3.7%, Korea by 5.6%. But our GDP went up by 4.5%. Up to late last year, Filipinos had no difficulties finding and keeping the important jobs overseas that were helping their families and contributing to the economy. Food prices were coming under control and inflation was being checked. Since then, the global financial turmoil has spread and jeopardized the well-being of billions of people across the globe. Late last year, 5,500 of our expatriates lost their jobs. Thank goodness today, the number still remains largely the same. Between then and now, 39,000 domestic workers, mostly in the export sectors of electronics, auto parts, garments, and mining, have lost their jobs, though 3,000 new jobs are being processed daily. I just came from the POEA office before coming here because part of our 4-day EDSA celebration is to use the spirit of EDSA, the spirit of unity, to join hands against the global crisis. And because the biggest challenge is the challenge of jobs, we had a jobs fair, and the fair had just started a couple of hours ago, and I was able to interview workers who were hired right on the spot. So we hope that this trend will continue, that there is room for those who have lost their jobs in new jobs. Some of them may require retooling, but others need not. For instance, one of the biggest job opportunities that I found earlier today was a Dunkin' Donuts store in, would you believe it, Dubai, which we thought was experiencing a lot of difficulties, but they have these openings, and the pay is good. An electronics worker can get into the job. A garments worker can get into the job. The important thing is that they have the Filipino traits of a smiling face and a congenial personality. Tourism, according to the latest report of Secretary Ace Durano, is bucking the regional trend, with our hotels and resorts fully booked for the first quarter, though they are living, well, they go from month to month and are not complacent about the rest of the year. In many respects, we were prepared for this global crisis. That preparation has mitigated some of the hardships that have arrived with this worldwide challenge. Our domestic strength comes in large part from our early response. In January 2008, we approved a stimulus of 1.4% of GDP. And we implemented it in March as the global food crisis erupted. The resulting deficit, though the stimulus was 1.4, the deficit was less than 1% of GDP. In reacting to this first wave of the economic downturn, that early 2008, we worked hard to manage the huge spike in the prices and accessibility of food, fuel, and rice. That stimulus that we passed that we approved in January and implemented in March included an 11 billion budget for the augmentation of the Department of Agriculture for its program towards rice self-sufficiency in 5 years. It included 24 billion for the National Food Authority for rice subsidies, 36 billion pesos of tax relief to the middle class, which increased the take-home pay of minimum wage earners, and that has buoyed up demand. If I may go earlier again to my trip to the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, we not only saw displaced workers finding new jobs, we also saw displaced workers finding new livelihood opportunities, food processing, and would you believe, perfume making. So, these displaced workers in their new livelihood are doing their work in their own homes and selling in their own homes. And the one who was doing meat processing has a very brisk business, so she has decided that she will she will also study part-time in TESDA so she can go into commercial cooking and expand her little meat process business into a restaurant because she's doing very well where she is now. The other one is producing perfumes. And I said, why did you get into the idea of perfumes? And she said, well, you know, we Filipinas, we never get out of our house without putting perfume on. So I figured that I would have a good market. So she had this, she went into the training, and I'd like to acknowledge Tommy Alcantara and Meko because many of these displaced workers came from Taiwan. And right in Taiwan, they were already told about the training, livelihood, and new job opportunities. And so she was trained by the Technology Resource Center. They gave her all the possible sources of supply. So she has her supply of her bottles, her essence, her essential oils, and so on. And so I said, how is your business doing? She said, very well. I have a very, very good market. So we really thank the consumption, our domestic consumption, because they buoy up the new opportunities for our displaced workers. And a lot of that, I would like to think, was also encouraged by the tax relief of minimum wage earners that Congress passed last year. To go back to that stimulus that we approved in January and carried out in March, part of that included also 5 billion pesos of conditional cash transfers, 7.5 billion of various cash grants, and 32 billion pesos that went into a 10% salary increase for government employees, another stimulus for domestic consumption. And then we worked just as hard to meet the next wave, the crisis that has come to be called the global tsunami, the worldwide financial calamity. Our GDP and GNP growth in the face of global recession shows that stimulus works. It shows it is not bound to fail.